Welcome. So I want to try something a little bit different. I have been frustrated with writing recently. I've really found it to be much more exhausting than it is cathartic or particularly expressive. I get so wound up in thinking about what ifs and counter arguments and ways that I might be wrong and fears of being wrong that it just takes forever to output even some of the simplest thoughts, which is deeply frustrating. So I want to turn to a format that's a little bit more stream of consciousness. And I've seen a couple of YouTube channels kind of go this format of just sort of very limited editing, almost no editing, and just continuous talking for some, not too long period of time with potentially relevant, oftentimes not relevant imagery going on for some visual effect. And in this case, what I want to show is actually relevant to the things that I want to talk about. And what I want to talk about is this surprise that I got from an old friend, John. He found this backup of a very early stage of the first Minecraft server that we started together. And at various points, there were about a dozen of us, maybe a little bit more, making all sorts of things on this Minecraft server, building whatever. You can see there's a stone Statue of Liberty here, jumping puzzle. This is, I think, the start of the Temple of Time, which never got finished. This is a very early backup, so lots of, like, not even a tenth of what we ended up making is on here, but there's one very important thing that is actually here that I would like to show off. I recorded all of this in screenshots before we lost the backup, so I had previously thought that this was all completely lost to time and that we would just have those screenshots and our memories to keep us going, which is still mostly true. We still don't have a backup of anything else, but it's this is something, and it's spurred quite a few thoughts. Particularly because screenshots are not for Minecraft are terrible. It's a very poor game graphically. It just doesn't have a lot of detail. It translates well to two dimensions. It depends a lot on the fact that it's 3D, the whole block structure of everything. If you look at screenshots, it's really hard to tell what's what. I remember when I documented everything that and showed it to people, there were very few things that most people seem to immediately get. They kind of had to stare at it for a little bit and then sort of figure it out. And you realize when you stop the frame and nothing's moving, then yeah, it does look very plain, very hard to determine what's what. So to be able to experience it again in 3D is huge and brings back a lot of memories. The act of making this stuff was for me quite very exciting. It was part of a bit of a creative awakening I was going through, realizing that I wasn't just hyper rational, you know, scientifically minded guy. I actually had a pretty intense creative streak, and it was something that I really needed to feed, and that I hadn't been feeding for a really long time. That I was just sort of sweeping under the rug because I didn't think I was that kind of person that was capable of that sort of way of thinking or of creating, of being able to make something that I thought looked good or that I was proud of. And that pretty quickly changed. I hadn't, maybe not by this point, but I was getting really into the whole process of creating stuff, and I'd made a couple things that I didn't think looked terrible and I thought were cool concepts. So in the middle of this process of exploring creatively, growing in that way, this is fall of 2010. My grandmother died, and it really hit me quite by surprise. Not in the timing of it. She had Alzheimer's, and she had been in late stage Alzheimer's for quite a while, so there was no shock there. But just the intensity of my experience of her death was definitely very surprising to me. Not because she was very important to me, but I didn't realize exactly how important, and a sort of like flood of all of these memories of her and all the ways that she was really important to me in like developing who I was, kind of came rushing forth. And the pretty much the only way that I could think to process it at that time was to start making stuff and to think about her and those memories while I made stuff. And that's one of the things that's really unique about Minecraft that I'm looking forward to in future future technology, games, software, whatever, um, is the fact that you can create while you think. It's not a complicated tool. It's very simple. You can just put something there, and it's very iterative. And if you don't like it, you can remove it, and that's it. It's very very straightforward. You don't have to abstract things very much to start making. And from that perspective, it made it very very possible for me to think of all of this heavy stuff as I created. So I made this heart, which I was not particularly happy about. I didn't know what else to make. I just kind of spat out the first thing that came to mind. But I put this border around it, and I realized that that arrow kind of looks, or that sorry, that heart kind of looks like an arrow. And I realized that it could be pointing somewhere. And so I built this trail that it goes down into the ground. And the trail was meant to lure people over here. I crafted out this whole tunnel, this tomb. That night, the night that I found out that she was dying. So not that she was not dead yet. She had had a heart attack, and it was very imminent. So getting to experience this again is pretty cool. I really thought that this was totally gone forever, and that I wasn't going to get to see it again. But in fact, you know, so it happens. Here it is, and it is just barely manages to work. Have to use the oldest version of Minecraft available to get it to run, but it does, and it's all here as I left it. I never touched it again after I made it. I left it pretty much pristine. So I get to experience this moment again. I hadn't been here since 2011. It was 5 years ago at this point. And there's a lot of emotions that come back when you get to experience something like this. It's sort of, you know how, memories that have lots of different sensory input going on always stick more. When there's smells involved, when there's sounds, music, different sorts of patterns of color, locations, just sort of the general mind state. All those different things combine to really make memories feel permanent, and being able to revisit it in 3D space and feeling how big it was, and to remember all of the little details of like, oh yeah, I remember, putting that there and deciding it should go like that, and I remember sort of how I felt at that moment. It's not something that the screenshots can ever replicate, and that can really only be found in being here in 3D space, in this place that I thought no longer existed. So you get to the bottom of this tunnel, and you reach the first thing that's a little more structured, clearly man-made. You walk to the end of this very dark tunnel, and at the very end of it, you drop down, and you get to the tomb. And this felt like her grave to me. She was buried in Pennsylvania, in her hometown, I believe. And it was not a place that I'd ever been to. I didn't know that much about what her experience was like there. So this, to me, this place that I had built, felt very personal. And I could, in the weeks following her death, I could revisit it over and over again, and just sort of like this was the place where I could come. I don't think of it as visiting her, but as remembering and being with those memories. It feels like a chamber of memory, if that is not too cheesy. It was a good thing. It was a really good thing. So I was really happy to get the chance to re-experience this again. And now, for as long as the software supports it, and I can hold on to the file without losing everything, then I'll have a copy of this tomb that I can revisit. It's just such a strange way that our age transforms old experiences. For me, going to the idea of going to visit a graveyard doesn't sound very nice to me. It doesn't seem like the place where I would want to remember someone in a sort of neatly manicured space in lots next to everyone else, where it's so many of the tombstones just look the same. It's just the chiseling that's different. It's, maybe that's a overly reductionist way of thinking about it. But this is the only one that exists for her. This is it. There is nothing else out there in the world that is like this, and it is something that I created in the midst of thinking about her and the grief that I had from her loss. And that fits with how I want to experience things, with how I want to relate to stuff in general, I guess. I want it to be personal. I don't want it to be like everything else. And this really is that. And these aren't thoughts that I was really capable of having when I made it. So to be able to revisit it and to get the chance to reprocess it and do that is really a fantastic thing. But something that it really brings home is just sort of the fragility of digital stuff. This is a less heavy example, but I think about it a lot with World of Warcraft. Played a lot of that game, several thousand hours there as well, and a lot of great memories, a lot of good times with friends. And those times took place in a physical space, not a physical space, a three-dimensional space. I should use that word. But in my mind, it certainly exists as a space in every bit as much as a physical space. That's how it stores in my memory. It's there just like that, and that's that gets interesting because I can't go revisit that. It's gone. So yeah, if I wanted to revisit it, then it would be monumental. It would be a hard task, and probably impossible. I might be able to replicate the physical space, but it's without the context. It's without the time. It's without everything that really added up to make it what it was. That's kind of the nature of an MMO. So that place is gone, and all those memories now are tied to a place that cannot be revisited and will fade basically as my memory does, which I thought was going to be the fate of this place, and it's been salvaged. I'm lucky for that. But one final note that I want to have on this: when I built it, and I'd actually forgotten about this, but when I built it, it had the intended effect. People saw the heart, and they followed the trail, and they kind of put it together. And so I walked around later at some point, and I found there were signs. People had responded to my memorial, and that was unexpected. I didn't really think about it being anything that anyone else would respond to. And those are maybe more expressions of support than necessarily a specific response to the memorial, but it was meaningful. It meant a lot to have that moment of being able to get support back in response to something I had made, and it didn't feel I don't know, it felt appropriate. It felt like the way that I wanted to receive support. And it all happened in Minecraft. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Thanks for listening. We'll see if I have the gumption to give this another go with something else. But I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Thank you so much.